In the shadows of the world's greatest conflict, a story often untold, a legacy frequently forgotten. Far from their homeland, over 2.5 million hearts and souls fought in a war that wasn't entirely theirs. Who were these brave men? Why did they fight? And what sacrifices did they endure? This isn't just a tale of war. It's a saga of courage, brotherhood, and an unyielding commitment to duty. How did the Indian soldiers carve their indelible mark in the annals of history during World War II? What were their hopes, their fears, and their dreams? We divide this video into 7 steps. World War II changed everything. From 1939 to 1945, it turned the world upside down. In this huge war, there were over 2.5 million Indian soldiers. They were one of the biggest groups of volunteers. These soldiers were more than just fighters. They were real heroes. They played a big part in the war, fighting in places far from home. Back then, India was controlled by Britain. So when Britain went to war, Indian soldiers did too. They fought in hot deserts, thick jungles, high mountains, and by the sea. Their courage and hard work helped them win many battles. But their story is filled with mixed feelings. They were fighting for a country that was ruling over India. At the same time, many people in India wanted freedom from Britain. These soldiers were stuck in the middle of this big conflict. It's a story that makes you think about bravery and freedom. To truly understand the story of Indian soldiers in World War II, we must look back at India's situation in the early 20th century. India was like a bird in a cage, controlled by Britain. The British had a strong grip on India, influencing its politics, economy, and culture. Indian people lived under British rule, and many dreamed of freedom. Life in India at this time was tough. Most people were farmers, and they struggled to make ends meet. The British took a lot of their crops, and taxes were high. Many Indian people felt that they were treated unfairly and longed for change. The call for independence grew louder daily, led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi. People wanted to rule their country, make decisions, and live freely. When World War II started in 1939, India was still under British control. The British leaders decided that India would fight on the Allies' side. They didn't ask the Indian people, they just made the decision. This put Indian soldiers in a strange place. They were asked to fight for freedom in other countries when their own country didn't. The British Army started enlisting Indian men to fight. They came from all over India, big cities, small villages, and different religious backgrounds. For many, joining the army was a way to earn money and support their families. But for others, it was more than that. It was a way to show their courage and strength and maybe, in a way, to fight for their own country's future. These soldiers were sent to faraway lands to fight in battles they had little to do with. They fought bravely and faced hard times. But their hearts were heavy. They missed their homes and families. And they wondered about the freedom they were fighting for. Would India ever be free like the countries they were fighting for? This was the world of Indian soldiers in World War II. A world full of hope, courage, and dreams of freedom. When World War II began, Indian men from all walks of life were called to join the fight. Enlistment was a mix of volunteers and recruits. Many young men saw this as a duty, a way to earn respect and support their families. Some were drawn by the promise of adventure, to see the world beyond their villages and towns. The process of joining the army was new to many. They would gather at recruitment centers, often in big cities, far from their homes. These centers were busy with lines of men waiting for their turn to be tested. The tests were tough. They checked if the men were fit, healthy, and strong enough for the challenges ahead. Many were turned away, but those who passed felt a sense of pride. They were going to be soldiers. The training was the next big step. For most recruits, this was a completely new world. They were trained in how to handle weapons, how to march, and how to survive in battle. The training was hard and strict. They had to wake up early, follow orders, and pushed their bodies to the limit. For many, this was the first time they were away from their families, and they had to learn to live with new people from different parts of India, speaking different languages. The training camps were like melting pots. Soldiers from different religions and cultures came together. They shared their food, stories, and dreams. Despite their differences, they were united by a common purpose: to serve as soldiers. They learned to rely on each other, building bonds to help them in the battles. As the training ended, these men were no longer just farmers, students, or workers. They were soldiers of the Indian Army, ready to face whatever lay ahead. They knew the risks, but also the importance of what they were doing. They were ready to fight for their country and, in a way, for their freedom. Indian soldiers were really important in many World War II battles. They were part of the British Indian Army and showed a lot of bravery and smart planning in different places worldwide. Their work was helpful and often changed the direction of important battles. In North Africa, these soldiers had to deal with a tough desert. They played a big role in the Battle of El Alamein in 1942. This battle was a key moment in the fight against the Axis powers, led by the famous General Rommel. The Indian soldiers were good at fighting in the desert and helped stop the enemy from moving forward. In Italy, the Indian soldiers faced a different kind of challenge. They fought in the mountains during the Italian campaign. They were part of the attack on Monte Cassino, a very strong and important place. They showed great strength and courage despite the hard fight against the Germans. In Southeast Asia, the Indian soldiers fought in the jungle against the Japanese. In the battles of Imphal and Kohima, they played a big role in stopping the Japanese from entering India. These fights were brutal, often in thick jungles and close-ups. The Indian soldiers were adaptable and brave, which was crucial in one of the biggest victories in that area. These are just a few examples of how Indian soldiers made a big difference. They fought far from home, in strange places, against strong enemies. They did more than just fight. They also helped carry supplies, build, and medical care. They were not just there in large numbers. They were there because of their spirit, skills, and belief in their cause. The role of Indian soldiers in World War II was a very important part of military history. They were brave and skilled, and their sacrifices greatly impacted how the war ended. The journey of Indian soldiers in World War II was fraught with immense physical and emotional challenges. These men, far from their homes, faced not only the horrors of war, but also the harsh reality of discrimination and internal conflict. On the battlefield, Indian soldiers braved extreme conditions. In North Africa, they endured the blistering heat of the desert, where sandstorms were as much an enemy as the opposing forces. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, they battled not only the enemy, but also diseases like malaria in a terrain as unfamiliar as unforgiving. In Europe, they faced the bitter cold and the relentless rain, fighting in conditions they had never experienced before. But perhaps even more challenging than the physical hardships was the emotional and psychological toll. Indian soldiers faced discrimination and racism within the ranks. They were often given menial tasks and were paid less than their British counterparts. Their bravery and sacrifices were frequently overlooked, and their contributions were relegated to footnotes in the larger narrative of the war. Moreover, there was a profound internal conflict. These soldiers were fighting for the British Empire, the power denying their country its freedom. Back home, the struggle for Indian independence was gaining momentum, led by leaders like Gandhi and Nehru, who advocated for non-violent resistance against British rule. This put the soldiers in a moral dilemma. They were fighting for the freedom of other nations, while their own country remained under colonial rule. This conflict was not just political, it was deeply personal. Many soldiers questioned their role in the war. Were they betraying their country by serving the British? Or were they gaining the skills and experience that could be valuable in the fight for independence? These questions haunted many soldiers throughout the war. The challenges faced by Indian soldiers in World War II were complex and multifaceted. They were not just fighting a war, but navigating the turbulent waters of colonialism, nationalism, and personal identity. The participation of Indian soldiers in World War II had a profound impact on the struggle for India's independence. Their involvement in the war set into motion events that would eventually lead to the end of British colonial rule in India. During the war, the Indian National Congress, the main political party fighting for independence, launched the Quit India movement, demanding an end to British rule. The contribution of millions of Indian soldiers to the Allied war effort contrasted starkly with the colonial subjugation they faced back home. This paradox did not go unnoticed by the Indian public or the international community. The war itself had weakened the British Empire economically and militarily. Britain could no longer maintain its vast empire, including its hold over India. The valor and sacrifice of Indian soldiers in the war were undeniable, and their return home brought these realities into sharper focus. They returned as heroes who had fought for freedom abroad, strengthening the call for freedom at home. Returning soldiers brought stories of bravery and tales of discrimination and hardship. These stories resonated with the Indian people, fueling a renewed sense of nationalism and a stronger demand for independence. Many of the soldiers had developed a new sense of self-respect and military skills and joined the independence movement, strengthening its cause. Moreover, the participation of Indian soldiers in the war exposed them to ideas of freedom and democracy. They had fought alongside soldiers from various nations, including those from countries that were not under colonial rule. This broadened their perspective and reinforced the belief that India deserved to be a free and sovereign nation. The impact of World War II on the Indian independence movement was significant. The war not only weakened Britain's ability to hold onto its empire, but also galvanized the Indian people, including returning soldiers, to fight for their freedom. The war had, in a sense, sown the seeds for the end of British rule in India. The story of Indian soldiers in World War II is a tale of unsung heroes whose contributions have only recently begun to receive the recognition they deserve. For many years, their bravery and sacrifices were overshadowed by the larger narratives of the war. Today, however, there's a growing awareness and appreciation of their role in one of history's most significant events. Memorials and monuments now stand in various parts of the world, honoring these soldiers. For instance, the India Gate in New Delhi is a powerful symbol of their sacrifice. It's where people come to pay their respects to the unknown soldiers who gave their lives for a cause far from their homeland. Similarly, in foreign lands like Italy, France, and Singapore, memorials bear the names of Indian soldiers who fought and fell there. There has been an effort to bring these stories into the public consciousness in recent years. Documentaries, books, and films have started to portray the experiences and contributions of these soldiers. These narratives are crucial for honoring those who fought and understanding the complex history of World War II and India's path to independence. Acknowledging the role of Indian soldiers in World War II is important for several reasons. It's a matter of historical justice, recognizing and honoring the sacrifices made by these men. It also provides a more complete and accurate picture of the war. Their involvement highlights the global nature of the conflict and challenges the Eurocentric narratives that have long dominated the discourse. Moreover, remembering the Indian soldiers who fought in World War II helps us understand the interconnectedness of global events. It shows how the struggle for freedom and justice transcends national boundaries and is a shared human endeavor. It also serves as a reminder of the complexities of colonial relationships and the contributions of colonized peoples to world history. The legacy of Indian soldiers in World War II is a vital piece of not only Indian history but world history. As we remember their bravery, we also acknowledge the intricate tapestry of human struggles and sacrifices that shaped our modern world. Looking back at the Indian soldiers in World War II, we see true bravery. These soldiers from India fought in a big war far from home. They faced really tough times and showed great courage. These men had hard choices to make. They were fighting for Britain, which was in charge of India, but they also wanted India to be free. This made their fight even more challenging. They missed their families and country and hoped for India's freedom. Many of these soldiers didn't come back home. They gave their lives in distant lands. Their story is not just about fighting in the war. It's about their strong spirit and love for their country. Today, we remember them for their bravery and sacrifices. They fought not just for others, but also for the dream of a free India. Their story teaches us about the importance of freedom and the courage to fight for it. In short, the Indian soldiers in World War II were real heroes. Their story is very important and reminds us always to value freedom and peace. We should always remember and respect their sacrifices.